Hello, everyone. Welcome to our workshop today on the Teams app in 365 and the related to Nitro. We've been calling it the Nitro bot. We also could call it a Teams app. It's also going to be rebranded soon to a new name. You'll see that shortly. But again, thank you for joining today to talk about to learn how to use the Teams app for 365 and with Nitro. My name is James Restivo. I think a number of you have been on these before, so you know the drill. But for those of you new to it, I'm obviously with Croquet Software, developers of Nitro Studio. And if you have any questions at any point in time during the webinar, you have a questions box in the GoToWebinar panel. So feel free to pop a note in there at any point in time. Could be a comment, could be a question. If you can't hear me, can't see the screen, something's not happening that you want to see, or you have a question about something that I've shown, feel free to pop it in there. So with that, it looks like we've got a number of folks who just logged on. So thank you for joining, and we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so Teams app for Nitro Studio. It's something that works in Teams. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It's a Teams app. So we put it in Teams. It's a bot essentially, and what the purpose of it is here is to give you a friendly, kind of mobile friendly in a sense interface, because Teams does work pretty well in the mobile world. But you have kind of a way to interact with the backend IT help desk system or any of the Nitro tool sets that you have through the bot. So the end user can interact from the bot interface, from the Teams interface. They're going to talk to the Teams app as they would any other, basically like they would any other person that they're chatting with. So it works the same as a chat on your Teams environment. So if you see here, we're actually in the chat space. And because it's a demo environment, I don't have a lot. My real Teams has like endless list of people I've talked to, meetings I've had, et cetera, et cetera. But for the demo, it's just a few up here, and we're talking to the Nitro bot here to run through some processes and run through some things. So we're going to talk about how the different commands work with the Nitro bot. We're going to talk about how the workflows interact with that as well. So you'll see all those things, how they work together. So the one thing I will note is that the commands in the Nitro bot and the Nitro workflows work very closely together. They kind of have to be there. It's one and the same thing, because there's going to be a lot of places where we're invoking adaptive cards, which we do through the Nitro workflows. There is a post and adaptive card action in Nitro workflows. I'll talk about how we use that in this process as well. And I'll walk through all the different commands. So again, all the commands have connections to that could be some links, some buttons that run other processes and invoke other workflows. So all works together, and that's kind of the point today as a workshop, to really dig into the how to make this work. Like there's the fancy part of it, the sales marketing part of it. It's like, oh cool, look, this bot can do all this cool stuff, and which it can. But how does it do that? For the folks on this call, it's important, I think, to understand more of the nuts and bolts of how does this actually work? How do I make it work for me in my scenario? So that's what we're here to talk about today. And so just to kind of start out, I will show you the bit of the wow factor of the Nitro bot and the Teams app and the different things that can be done with it. So first of all, you create this list of commands, and I'll show you where you create that list of commands in the in Nitro Studio to make this list visible. You may have this working across multiple sites within a site collection. It could be working across multiple site collections. So a number of ways you can make this work. But essentially, you have these different commands. You can, if you have more than, I think, was it 15, 10? I think this is a configurable setting. You can show more commands. You can see here, there's a bunch of commands. If I, toggle this open, there's the commands there. All these different commands are going to do different things as we go through the process, and they might connect out to different sites and do different things. So there's some ones that are basically just going to show tickets, where you can pull up a list of items from SharePoint. So this, we're pointing this to our IT help desk, but it could be a list of items from SharePoint, a list of documents from SharePoint. You're just pulling up something from SharePoint to show in the Teams interface. You can submit items, so that's basically like a submit new link. Again, we're tying it to IT Help Desk, but it could be any SharePoint list item could be created through this interface. Again, you can pull up a list. We could do a search. There's various searches, and I'll talk about the various search options in the Nitro bot and in the Teams app as well, what the different search options do. And you can see there's a couple of those options here that we've pre-configured. The viewing, again, a couple more views, basically 3 different views there. And one thing you'll to point out is if you are using our help desk and you want to use the bot with our help desk, and you buy the bot license with our help desk, or you have it included, which some people do, a lot of these are pre-configured for you, right? So a lot of these things will be done for you, so you don't have to go and configure it yourself. But the point of this webinar too is to show you how to configure these things yourselves if you want to. But if you don't want to do that, just know if you're using our IT help desk, we have a predefined set of commands that you can get shipped out of the box, and you don't have to worry about it. So both are very valid. But you can do things like showing tickets. I think I'll do it from this one, show tickets. It says test command, but let's see if it actually works. And so it's showing all these tickets from a particular list. What shows up here can be configurable to a degree from the command interface as well. So you can pull up different things there. See, there's I'm gonna pull up my list of commands again. And you can pull up the search. Let's do that. Submit. Let me show you what the submit looks like. So again, it gives you just a really basic kind of SharePoint form, not even SharePoint form, it's a Teams form, Teams card that can be filled out, but it's writing back to a list in SharePoint. So the fields that get filled out here are going to write back directly into SharePoint. So it's essentially another potential intake form that you have for this. It's not coming up. I think maybe we configured it under a different one. So let me go ahead and pull that up. I think it's under here. Here we go. So we changed our things around a little bit. So these are going to work probably a little better. There we go. So we got the new IT ticket, and that gives you some fields to pull in here. Now, what fields get pulled into this? That's going to come from that configuration of the command, and that is something I'll show you how you can add more fields to this as needed. You can add a category field. You can add a few other things in here to get some information. Again, this is what the end user sees, the person who's interacting with that Teams app, and so you can control how little or how much is given to them. See, there's some other commands for the showing of the tickets. We showed that one. Searching, we do a search for IT tickets, or IT, search through tickets. Let's see, printer issue. Let's see, I hit that, and that's going to bring back a list. And this is where, once this comes back, you'll see this is kind of where the workflows come in. Maybe not here specifically, but I'll show you where the workflows come in just a minute. Some printer's not working. Okay, here's the ticket. So we got some information. And then here's where the workflows come in actually, because we can add a note to this ticket or we could close it. Again, this is all happening through, you can see through the Teams interface. We don't have to even go into SharePoint. You can see it's currently a status unassigned, and we can go ahead and close that. And then we have to enter a note. So you can see we got some prompts in here as well for some information, like how do I how do I capture more detail? We don't want them to just close it. We want them to actually add some data in here. Resolved when I visited the office, or something like that. Hit OK. Now I get ticket closed successfully. So gives you that information, that feedback that it was done, and then you can move on to other commands as well. It's doing something. I'm going to give it a moment to figure out what it's doing here. But we could pull up those commands again and do something else with this. What's it doing? I don't know. All right, just go ahead, open up the commands again. There's also ways, shortcuts to these. I'll show you where you can configure shortcut options to these commands as well for staff who are working with this. It might give you a good way to have your staff interact with this help desk system or with a SharePoint site without having to open up SharePoint. Again, another option. You don't even have to open up SharePoint. Really important for the kind of IT world is the searching of knowledge base articles. And maybe not just IT, but anywhere where you're serving a population and you have articles or you have information about how to resolve their issues, FAQs and whatnot, you can configure a search in here as well. So you can search KB articles and enter a search text. We always like to hammer on printers. This one's probably not going to come up with anything because I typed in pinter instead of printer. Mistype on my part. Let's see what happens with that. It might come up with nothing. Yep, couldn't find anything. Let me try it again. And this is adaptable too, right? So we have some bot analytics happening on the back end of this, where you can see what have people entered and what is not getting resolved. And you see right here, we've searched for a knowledge base article. We've pulled one up. Is this going to be helpful to the user? Maybe. I don't know. We can try it though. You know, they open it up. It is going to open up the SharePoint form, so it does come out of the Teams interface, but it gives them, gives them a link to that knowledge base article. But then they can come back to the chat and say, you know what, that helped me, that it actually resolved my problem. And now that you don't even have to create a ticket, it's just going through the the process to close to resolve the issue. All right, issue's resolved, but did create a ticket and automatically closes it. That was a way to capture the information as well. So we want to capture anytime those questions get asked, even if they get closed or resolved right away, at least there's some record to say this was asked, this was resolved, here's the resolution, here's the thing. And you notice I got two of these. It's only because I'm in here as an admin account and assigned staff, so it does tend to do two, but usually in the case of an end user, you wouldn't be getting the two notifications, you would just get the one. But that's how that works. Gets you some metrics and some information about where, there's going to be some information on this ticket that says it came from a bot, and then that way you know what tickets were created from the bots. But beyond that, there's also analytics to say what issues were asked or what questions were asked that were not answered. And maybe you need to create a knowledge base article for that. So there's some metrics on the back end to understand, and some analytics basically to understand, did this actually resolve someone's problem or not? So you can figure it that way. So beyond that, I mean, there's a few other things we can do here, but I think, you guys get the concept. It's, if there's anything you want to see more from the Teams app side of things, we can do it. But I kind of wanted to jump into the actual commands and how those interact with our workflows and how that all kind of ties together from what you see here. How does it get, how does this actually get configured in the background? So we're going to leave this. We're going to go over to our Nitro Studio. So to get to the bot, command interface, you would go to Nitro Studio, you'd go to the advanced section down below, and you see there's a bots link down here. And let's open up that bots link. See Nitro AI services, actually had to open over here, close that. And you can see here, you can configure your Nitro bot commands within this site collection. So it does, again, create them at the site collection level, so you can create them for any site within the given site collection. And you see here are some of those ones I created for this particular site collection. You can have, you see when in the bot, there's multiple commands in there across multiple site collections. So that's something you're going to see in the bot as well. There's one bot per tenant. So if you have it configured for multiple site collections, you'll see that. But actually, a lot of these can be, commands are permissioned and security trimmed by Active Directory groups. So if you wanted to show only a certain set of commands or a certain group of users, you have that option. So, again, because we're in the demo environment, you're going to see all these different commands across all these different site collections. But in your world, in your reality, you're more likely to have a subset of those commands visible to subsets of people at any given time, right? So you don't want to show all the facilities functions to an IT staff member and vice versa. But we can control that through Active Directory groups within each of these commands. And again, that's also helpful even within the context of just one site, one help desk. You could have a set of commands that are for the end users to interact with the bot, with the Teams app. And then you have a set of commands that are there for the staff. So you have that differentiation with those Active Directory groups, and the security trimming really helps you determine who sees what when they interact with this bot. So it gives you a way to have it, have your bot and use it too, I guess you could say. But so just kind of walk through some of these. You can see the command types that we have here. There's a few we've pre-configured. Again, these are mostly the ones that are going to come out of the box with the IT help desk bot. There's command types of invoking workflows, which basically just brings up a workflow, list views, SP searching list, knowledge-based search. You'll see there's a number of different search options. I'll talk about those in brief. But all the entire list of commands you'll see up here in the new commands option. So it's invoking workflows, which is just invoking a Nitro workflow. List views, which brings up a view of a SharePoint list. There's a aggregate list where I think kind of like a list roll up. If you wanted to bring up multiple items across multiple sites, we could do that. You see there's different search options here. Search list is really, it's really just a Nitro search using our Nitro camel queries. There's a SharePoint search, which uses the SharePoint native search option. There's an advanced SharePoint search. I have to look into that. I'm not recalling the difference off the top of my head, but then there's an FAQ search and knowledge-based search, which knowledge-based search is kind of specific to our knowledge base with the IT help desk, but FAQ is more of a document library search, right? So kind of a different search parameter for a document library versus a regular SharePoint list. So that's why we have some differentiation there in the different types of search options. Then ultimately, you could just simply launch a URL. The person goes to that URL and they continue their action. It's just the Teams app just becomes a launching pad or kind of a portal in a sense to bring them to that space. Just kind of walk through some of these in detail. Look at the ones that are already configured for the invoke workflow. So this one, and we'll toggle over to the workflows to kind of see how the other side of this works, kind of two sides of the same coin. We've got the command name, which we've indicated with the site name to help us internally from our demo site differentiate between the different sites and where they're configured. But you might have it more limited to just a simpler command name for you. You can have shortcuts, which are basically ways to, you hit you can in the body you can do CMD. I don't know if you can see it. The screen's really small, but it says quick command execution by entering CMD shortcut, whatever the text is in here, in bot chat box. So if we wanted to have someone, rather than search a knowledge base with this word, because by default this can search a knowledge base, but the search, if you type in submit, it's going to bring up that submit form. Tags help you. This is actually a sorting capability. If you have multiple sites, multiple commands, you can sort them by different tags. You have some keywords on there. And you see the allowed AD groups. This is where you're going to determine who does this show for. And you can have any number of AD groups in here. You can see there's a few that we've created in here for different groups. This is all the A's, B's, C's. So these are all the different groups that we've created in our Active Directory, but you could select as many as you want in here to show this particular command in the Teams. And of course, if you wanted to, create a command, but you're not quite ready, kind of like a publish feature. If you're not quite ready to publish it or make it available, there's this enable tab. So you could go ahead and enable or disable it based on where you are in your development process of that particular command. So these, basically all these up here, these are going to be consistent across all these bot commands. You're going to have a name, you're going to give it a description, you can identify a shortcut for it, you can give it a tag to sort it and group it essentially. Keywords, which are uses language understanding to pull up the thing. So kind of like a keyword, but more flexible in the sense that it's actually going to use natural language processing and a connection over to a Lewis app in Microsoft to determine what the person's actually trying to ask. They have your AD groups, again, that's limiting who sees what, and then you can enable or disable it. So up here, these are all pretty much going to be the same across the board for all these commands. Down here, you're going to have your, the particular parameters of this command. So this particular command is going to run a workflow, but we first have to identify the site, the list, and then we can identify the workflow that is going to fire off. So in this case, we have our new ticket adaptive card workflow. which is going to be invoked. So all that does, submit IT ticket, runs that command, invokes this workflow. Okay, so now what happens with that workflow? Well, that's where we have our description, all that information we saw earlier on the bot over here. If I do submit IT, I think it's going to pull that one up. Okay, so I'll just go do this. Submit IT ticket. All right, maybe I'll do this one instead. So I'm gonna put it through its paces a little bit. You'll see what happens if it breaks. So like fun things I like to do during these workshops. But you'll see here it brings up the IT ticket, and all that command was doing was invoking a workflow, which then brings up this adaptive card. So how does that do that? Well, we have over here in the workflows the post adaptive card action, and so here we go, new ticket adaptive card. So let's make sure that matches up. Come over here, new ticket adaptive card. Okay, that's the right workflow. So we're going to look at what this one's doing. And you'll see that this is running one simple action, which is to post an adaptive card. So that's running from our workflows. And what gets shown on that card is what you determine in here. So most of it is going to be from the card actions, because you have a create list item action in this space. And you can see here's what we're going to actually put on that card when it gets presented to the end user. So give them a place to enter a title. You can see the user input is yes. A place to enter description, user input is yes. Requester, user ID, we have a placeholder there, so it's going to pull in who is the actual user. Priority, they can select the priority. And then ticket source is bot. Well, that's going to be added to the card, but we're not going to have any input. So that's okay. But if we wanted to have them select category, we could do that as well. So if we do category, that's going to be user input. We're going to choose that view of the category list, which is going to be all items. That's no problem. Is it required? Yes or no? Well, okay, we'll make it required. And then we could enter a default value into that field as well. So through this, you can build out all the fields that you want to have filled out on that new SharePoint list item, essentially, for the adaptive card. So we could add that and put that in there if we wanted. And that's all it's doing, and it's bringing up the post adaptive card action, and basically showing the user whatever you put in here for your card action type. You see there's a few different action types. So as you go through, you might invoke different things for updating lists or invoking other workflows. So you can do that from here too. Again, if you have any questions or anything, going too fast or whatever, put it into the questions box. Anything you want me to kind of go back and cover or anything, of that nature, feel free to pop it into that questions box at any point in time. Okay. So then another probably common one, aside from presenting an adaptive card for entering data, we could just pull up a simple list view. This is really useful for any number of people who are interacting with this Teams app. They might want to just bring up, show me all my tickets, show me all the tickets I submitted that are currently open. We can create different commands to do that. So again, you'll see these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 commands at the top are pretty much the same. There are 7 options. Then down here, we have to identify our site and our list. So again, we do have we have a field here for getting the filter. And how we build that filter, well, there's some options to do that. There's a Graph API query. There's some information on how to do that. But if you have questions, you can always come and ask us, because it is a little tricky to put something like this. But it kind of makes sense if you're, requester lookup equals me, fields equals close, not equals closed. It kind of makes sense if you spend some time with it. But I would have to look at the, this listing over here. It's again, Microsoft query parameters, so it's pretty standard practice kind of stuff. But you can see the different functions, different query parameters they have in place, and different things that you can kind of do with that, counts and whatnot. So you go through all that in detail, kind of some light reading to put yourself to sleep at night if you want if you want to learn more about that. That's actually pretty interesting. It's pretty neat stuff. And anyway, essentially, it just gives you a query to say, what do you want to do when this list view command is invoked? And in this case, we're bringing back all the tickets that are assigned to me that are not closed. Pretty simple. Then you could put a header on that, my open tickets, and then again, we have to have some kind of workflow that happens when you click that, right? So we don't have a command in here, but we do have a workflow that is going to show the card when you click it, which you can go to that display adaptive card workflow over here. Did I get rid of it? I might have gotten rid of it. Let me pull it up again. You can display adaptive card workflow. And see, these are all of the user bot triggered types. So anything you're going to be doing from the bot, you'd want to configure as a user bot triggered type of workflow. But you're going to do this display ticket adaptive card that can be used in multiple places in these functions. So sometimes these workflows can be repurposed and reused a number of times. Essentially, you got the same adaptive card that you have over here to bring up what the user sees. In this case, we're just showing the card. It's a display, so we put more information up here. There's no necessarily any action being taken, although you can create action buttons on the card as well. So they could, that could be for like approvals even. If you want to go through a whole approval process within the construct of Teams, you could do that. But you see before, I think you might have noticed we had the add note and close ticket buttons when we pulled up a card, pulled up a ticket, and this is where those were coming from. So we have these ones that it's going to close the ticket. You see it's got the work log as user input, right? And then it's got the request status, which is just going to set to closed, and we don't have any input there. But remember, we saw that user input, the work log was required, and the answer was, it was required, and we did want user input, so that's there as well. So you got those buttons. Basically, they appear as these action type buttons on the bottom, as you might remember. So you can add any number of those to the card as needed. Usually, if you do more than 2 or 3, you might get this little ellipsis, and it gets a little tricky. So you probably want to keep it, in best practices, to keep it fairly, limited to the best of your ability in that particular card action. What do you want it to do, right? So you want to keep it fairly simple in that sense. But yeah, a lot of these workflows are just really simple post-adaptive cards, and it's basically what happens when someone clicks in that, what gets returned in that command. Like we come back over here, that's coming from the adaptive card. We got that submit button on there. That's kind of default. But if we did something like commands, just kind of bring it home a little bit. Do this, do show more commands, because I have a lot of them. I'm going to view my open tickets. So that's that one we're just looking at. It's going to query that list, bring back everything that's assigned to me. So this is where that adaptive card action, the workflow comes into play, because now when we click this, when I hit that, what happens? Well, it's got to go do something, which is going to run that workflow. And now here you see that add note and close ticket, which is coming from that configuration we have over here in the in this card. So there's an add note and close ticket, and then what's going to happen when they click it? Well, that's what we determine over here, and we can run from there. Yeah, so that's going to do that for the list view. And you're going to get something similar with the search options. If I come back over here, here we can just kind of complete this this topic here. You can add in other fields as needed. You're pulling in the title field, you're pulling in priority, request, ask, due date. You got some kind of value separator. You can see that borne out on the list here. You got the title, it's a value separator of the piping. You got the priority, you got the status, you got, you could put something else over here, which I think is blank, assigned staff perhaps. Let's see what it says. Oh, due date. So due date was blank. That's why you're not seeing it there. And then running the action, the workflow. And then, things like the knowledge-based search we can set up. Let me see what that just kind of pop up when that looks like. KB search, again, this is kind of specific to our IT help desk. So I'll just go over it briefly, but you can see it's got a lot of the same things that we have in our knowledge base, so with the category and issue type and number of other features. These are a lot of these are actually pre-populated if you set this up with a connection to our help desk. So you don't have to worry too much about it. It's a lot to configure, but we do have instructions in our manuals to go through it. But again, that's kind of specific to our knowledge base, but there's also a search you can put in here, which is specific to, it's a SharePoint search. We're putting in, site in the list we're going to be searching. User permissions, maybe we want to, you see that there's some options with the searching, which you don't always, only do get it sometimes with SharePoint, but if you have some item level permissions, you can make sure those don't get returned in the search with that. If you don't have any item level permissions, then you don't have to worry about it. But you got some other settings here for, enter search text, that's the prompt. So if I come back to here and I hit that search tickets command, all right. Hit search tickets. So there's my prompt right there, enter search text. So that is coming from right here. Then we do the result, it'll say search result. And then again, the workflow has to be invoked. What happens when someone clicks on one of those items in the search? Well, now we're going to do that display ticket adaptive card again and just pop that open so they see it. So let me come back here and enter that. So enter whatever text for searching. You see it's got all the different tickets that have the printer. And now we're going to pop that open, and this is going to run that workflow for displaying the adaptive card. And it's going to take a minute. So now we're displaying that adaptive card again. So again, either we're coming from the list view or from the search, it's doing the same thing. If you want to present different views of that card based on where they're coming from, you could do that too. So and you can see those actions we have at the bottom. And let's see, all the searches are kind of similar in that sense. If you do a search list, it's got a filter where you have to build out that filter, kind of similar to the list view option. If you do the advanced SharePoint search list, so just take a look at that. It's got a little more. Oh yeah, you can actually search specific columns instead of doing the whole the SharePoint list search is just going to search everything across all the columns. But if you wanted to specify columns, we could do that here. That's the differentiation there. And then, that's FAQ search is going to be more of like the library, right? So I mentioned that the, SharePoint search is search, the Nitro search, those are all going to be specific to lists, but this one can actually be specific to a document library. Or, when we select one of our sites, we'll get a list of libraries and we can search, asset manuals or whatever through the bot itself. So all that stuff can be done. You can also go to launching a URL, which is essentially just going to bring up, some URL that you put in there, like to the company internet, whatever it might be. But all that can be done through the, through the bot, through the Teams app interface, and it makes it pretty cool to manage all that stuff and really do it through this interface here, which can really be very adaptable to the kind of the mobile world. And just to kind of show you, there's a way we can do this with the console, kind of make it a little more mobile friendly. That one doesn't quite work the way it, okay, it's kind of readapting a little bit. It's not the perfect way to show a mobile interface, I can be honest with you, but it does kind of give you that sense that we can put it in the mobile interface. And imagine this is going to fill up your screen, because it really should and really will in real life. I'm not sure why the developer tool is showing it as otherwise, but this part of our mobility story with Nitro is that the Teams app can be used in the mobile interface. We're doing a whole bunch of stuff in that mobile world to make our Nitro web parts. They're all pretty responsive to begin with, but there's some gaps that we're working to close, admittedly. So we are going to be doing that. But this is one way to kind of get that mobile interface. And one of the things you can do here that is kind of interesting is you could actually take your, essentially the SharePoint sites in your portal, and you can pop those into Teams as well. So now you're not just putting a bot or a Teams app into Teams that they can interact with, but now through a channel and through the through the portal pages, you can actually create a tab for each portal page in Teams. So you see this looks a little different. We're trying to play around with our support ticket a little bit more, but it's got essentially they could come into Teams and submit their support ticket, not just through the app, but also through a tab in Teams itself, in a Teams channel. And see, all these are essentially the same thing that we've seen in our IT portal already. And so there's nothing too crazy here, but again, it does lend itself, as the portal as a page, and also in here, it does lend itself to the mobile interface. Just kind of show you that real quick if it actually works. Yeah, I don't know, it's not working the greatest in this scenario, but it does give you a way to kind of see what things look like in the in that space. So we can home page, see what that looks like. I wish this showed up bigger. I'm not sure why it's not taking up the whole screen. Normally would. So you would see more in here in your real life if we come into this through the mobile interface. But yeah, kind of another way, another option for managing your site, SharePoint site, could be SharePoint site in general, Nitro site in general, it could be an IT help desk site, could be one of our other applications. So we've got that adaptation to put it into Teams. So you have the Teams app to interact with it. Then you have the you could also put those various pages within SharePoint directly, so you can kind of interact with it that way. So a couple different options for using Teams as a front page and a front end for your Nitro sites or applications, and also kind of lending itself to that mobility aspect of it. Yeah, I mean that's what I want to cover with the commands, with the workflows. You've got the invoking of the workflows. You've got the different adaptive cards that you can put up there. You can see that there's some different workflows that we've put in here as well for displaying adaptive cards. I'm just going to sort by event type. Yeah, send adaptive card should request our ticket resolve. So that's another workflow that gets invoked when we're resolving a ticket. Display my assigned tickets, different things like that. You can create these different workflows that connect over to your Teams app commands, and those are how you can automate things and run things. Like I said, a lot of this stuff can be shipped out of the box with our IT help desk bot, but you also have the ability to configure these things on your own on an as needed basis whenever you have a need to create that. So it's kind of like, the way I like to think about it is from the Teams app side of things, you're creating the commands, and then so you have a command, but then from the actual, when the user interacts with it, they click a button essentially. That's the workflow side of it, right? So in the Teams, it creates brings up an adaptive card. If you're in bots, if you're in that card, then it talks over to workflows and does something from there. So that kind of covers what I wanted to cover today with this workshop. If there's any questions, feel free to let us know either now or after the fact. We're happy to address any concerns or any questions. If you want to go through this in more detail, or if there's anything that was went too fast with, let me know. Or if there's anything you want to see in greater detail, or different processes they want to try to game out, could we do this with the bot and Teams app kind of workflow, or how would this work? How would the approval processes work? That kind of thing. We'd be happy to have a conversation with you about how all that plays out with the bot, and with the keep calling it bot. It's a Teams app, Teams bot, whatever you want to call it. We can see how that all plays out. But yeah, thank you for joining today. Appreciate it. And if you have anything else, any questions after the fact, let us know. And otherwise, hope everyone has a great day. Thank you so much.